All right.
Sharon, I think you're already recording. I think it's already
It's
recording.
someone else that's recording, so now I'm
Oh, okay,
recording as
okay.
well. It
Sorry.
just
You said that a while ago. Sorry.
yeah,
Sorry.
somebody else is already
I
recording.
apologize.
No worries. So our presenters today are Lisa Davison and Maya Thibodeau from Lessard, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell you more about Lessard. And ladies, thank you so much for being here today. We're looking forward to the topic.
Thanks
Thanks,
for having
Shannon.
us. Yeah. I'm Lisa Davison, and I am an occupational therapist. I have about 27 years experience in the education system. I've been with Lessard for about 3 years, and prior to coming to Lessard, I was an occupational therapist in a local school district. But I also, the last 8 years I was there, was an autism specialist, and so kind of really got to look at the whole big picture, not just addressing the OT aspects with students with autism. But the Lessard Project is the Louisiana Autism Spectrum and Related Disabilities. It is a project through the Human Development Center at LSU in New Orleans. And we're part of a UCED, which is University Centers for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. And so we're one of 68 universities that are really geared toward providing assistance for families with children with disabilities or persons with disabilities to provide technical assistance, training, information, and research. The Lessard team in particular is a multidisciplinary team. We have special education teachers, school administrators, educational diagnosticians, school psychologists. We have OTs, board certified behavior analysts, and we have speech language pathologists on our team. And we support teachers, schools, and local educational districts throughout the state. We provide professional development, action planning, and coaching related to the education of students with disabilities. And so I'm going to turn it over to Maya, and she'll introduce herself and get started.
Thanks, Lisa. My name's Maya Thibodeau. I am a speech therapist by trade. I have a little over 20 years experience, and it's about half and half divided between the educational setting and medical setting. And really, I have spent the last 20 years working with individuals across the lifespan, from early intervention all the way through geriatrics and skilled nursing facilities and nursing homes. And just love to support people in their communication, and super happy to be here today to present some of this information to you guys. So let's go ahead and get started. Is there anything else you wanted to say, Lisa, before we get rolling? Okay, here we go. So today we are going to discuss communication, some definitions and some terminology related to communication. We're going to talk about some strategies to support language acquisition. We're going to talk about some modes of communication, some types of AAC or augmentative alternative communication, and how to encourage communication naturally and how to incorporate AAC into that. So the big idea is that everyone, regardless of age, needs to have an accessible and socially acceptable form of communication. We know this. Communication is super important. What communication is the sharing of information by any means, right? A message is sent, a message is received, and it's considered successful when the message, okay. So sorry for that typo. It should say that it's considered successful when the message received matches the message that was intended. So reasons that we communicate to express our wants and needs, to share information, thoughts, and ideas, to achieve social closeness, and to meet social etiquette expectations. So these are the big four, the big four categories of communicative functions. There are lots and lots of reasons why we communicate, but for the most part, they all fall into one of these categories. And communication by its very nature is reinforcing. We see often people, kids, students being reinforced with Skittles or other desirables to prompt them and encourage their communication. But really, all we need to do to reinforce communication is acknowledge it, as meaningful and reinforce it through providing our contributing our own information to that communication. So communication should be naturally reinforcing. Yeah. Some terminology. Communication, language, and speech are three terms that are often used interchangeably, but should not be. So when we break it down, communication, like we said, is just an exchange of ideas, an exchange of information. And that's the bigger picture, right? Under communication, we have language. And language is an exchange of information using a shared symbol system. And then we have speech, which is the shaping of vocal sounds into words. So speech is a way that we employ language, but there are many ways to employ language outside of speech. And speech and language are not interchangeable terms, right? Very different. And we really shouldn't confuse them, because a lot of our communicators are unable to use speech, but are still able to be effective communicators. So when we look at speech versus language, speech is a motor act. It starts with the lungs and respiration. It moves up through the throat to produce voice. It moves past the lips and the tongue for articulation to shape the voice into sounds. And then it ends at the oral and nasal cavities, where we resonate those sounds and further shape them into meaningful words. And so all of that relies on physical anatomy and function. But language, on the other hand, starts at the level of the brain, right? We learn language by exposure, and it's shaped by our processing abilities. Language is receptive and expressive, and it relies upon cognition, not so much on our motor and physical abilities. And it's not always observable like speech. Language happens behind the scenes. And you do not have to be a speaker to be an effective communicator. And it's very, very important to understand. Our kids who aren't speaking can still be effective communicators, and they might just need a few tools and supports to help them to be effective communicators. So let's look beyond speech, right? Like I said, speech requires perfect timing, nerve impulses, muscle movements, all have to be in perfect coordination. And it relies on our physical anatomy, our structure, and our function. It relies on strength and range of motion, and a lot of really particular physical attributes that some of us may be lacking. So speech is very limiting, and we want to move beyond speech today and talk about language. So language can be divided into verbal and nonverbal. When we say verbal, we're talking about language that uses words. When we say nonverbal, it's just everything else, all other communication that does not involve words. So nonverbal communication looks like body language, facial expressions, touch, how far you stand from somebody, like that sends a message, how much time, pacing of conversation. If you jump right in, right, that sends a message. Vocalizations can be messages, and paralinguistics, which are like your tone, it's where you pick up on sarcasm, those types of things. And music and visual arts are ways to express ourselves non-verbally. Verbally, we have spoken language, like we talked about speech. We have written language on text. Sign language is verbal because it uses words, right? Signs are words. And then we have AAC, augmentative and alternative communication, which also employs verbal language. And then we break language down to receptive and expressive, right? There's what we hear and understand, or receive and understand, or read and understand. And then there's expressive, right? This is what we deliver through our speech, through our nonverbal communication, or through our AAC. So nonverbal communication says a lot more than we realize. It's gestures, facial expressions, muscle tension, vocal tone, vocal intensity, inflection, intonation, body language, posture, physical proximity. And there are lots of different ways that we employ nonverbal communication. You might see your child employing nonverbal communication when they manipulate you to do something for them, or come see them, or come see something. They tug on you to join them in an activity. That's a nonverbal communication. Pointing or showing you something, shifting their gaze towards something. If they are attending to you as they do that, they're communicating with you. And then using objects, right? When a child brings you their sippy cup, you know that they probably want something to drink. And then we have different types of verbal communication. When I say different, I mean atypical, unusual types of verbal communication, such as echolalia, using made-up words, saying the same word over and over again, and speak singing, right? And these are all non-traditional ways that that we might employ verbal communication that look maybe different than your typical communicator. Echolalia is just a repeating of chunks of words or phrases that have been previously heard. And we know what it means to make up words, to repeat words over and over. And we've heard people speak singing. I'm guilty of doing that a little bit when I'm alone around my house. So the point is that we want to respect all modes of communication that our children come with, right? It might be non-traditional. It might look a little bit different from their peers, but that's okay. What's important is that they are communicating. And one of the ways, one of the types of communication that we really need to respect is behavior, right? Behavior is communication. Communication and behavior are intricately linked. A behavior always communicates a message, and those messages are either going to be an attempt to gain or achieve something, or an attempt to avoid something or escape it. So just looking at the communicative function of behavior, what happens is our kids who do not have super effective communication, they have to come up with another means of expressing themselves, right? And so that might be a challenging behavior that's born out of the frustration of not being able to communicate. And then that challenging behavior might achieve the goal. So maybe they threw a fit and got what they wanted. And so your child might think, well, that communication worked. And so moving forward, well, that communication worked, when I threw a fit, I got this thing I wanted. So maybe if I throw more fits, I will get these other things that I want. So we have to look at our children's behavior and analyze that for what they're trying to communicate and how we can support them in finding a healthier means, a more effective means of achieving their goals. So what is a prerequisite for developing communication skills? Opportunity. That's all our kids really need. And where we give them an opportunity, we just have to make sure that they are motivated, that they have a desire to communicate. So we're going to go through 10 tips for growing words in all children. So tip 1, put the child's message into words. Say what the child means. You know your kids. So if they pull you to the pantry and you know that they're doing it because they're hungry, well, say that. Narrate for that child. You must be hungry. I bet you want a snack. If they kick their legs while on the swing, you want mom to push? Okay, I'll push. Give them the language that they lack. Model that for them. Tip number 2, stop talking and wait. Get close, look interested, and wait for them to send you a message. So what that might look like is, let's say you're in a doctor waiting room and there's a baby in the room that's crying. And you know that your child is disturbed by that baby. It's getting your child's attention. And you could say, I know that baby's being loud, or I wonder what's wrong with that baby. But if you just wait and let your child communicate with you, you might be surprised at what you get. And once they look at you, which is a communication in itself, right? They're trying to get your attention. See, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Are you hearing what I'm hearing? So once they make that communication attempt, point to that baby and say, yeah, I see that baby is crying. So give them that wait time and just see what they give you. Tip number 3, pausing during a familiar routine. So do something repetitive with your child and then pause in the middle of that routine from time to time. So you could kind of freeze and see what they say while they're expecting you to perform the next step. Do they urge you on? So using the swing example, you might push for a few times and then stop and then look expectant and then wait. Because you know they want you to push more, so give them a chance to communicate that to you. And once, and then you want to always kind of go back to step 1 and reinforce the words that either they attempted or that you know that they were attempting to communicate. Tip number 4: use fun words. Right, make it fun. Language should be fun. Make sound effects. Use words and fun sounds. Fun words and sound effects are often the first words, right? Animal sounds, boom, pop, bang, pow, wee, crash, uh-oh, yum, yuck, blech, zip, and achoo, right? Like all of those things will get your child's attention. They're fun, they're low pressure. You're not expecting them to say these things. They don't have to say them to get something. They're just fun, and using these words, modeling these words kind of takes the pressure off because really there's nothing more to them other than that they're fun. And we want to also imitate our children's sounds and actions. When we do this, it causes our children to notice us, like, wait, you copying me? It gets their attention. And it gets communication going. So when you mirror their communication attempt, it allows them to get that feedback that's so important when we're learning communication. So if your child bangs on a drum, you bang on the drum and then wait. If your child rolls a car across the floor, you roll the car across the floor and then wait. Of course, you want to use those sound effects at the same time. And if your child says, ooh, when you blow the bubbles, then you repeat that after them. We want to imitate and model for them. Tip number 6, we're going to talk to our children during everyday routines using the same vocabulary. Routines are super important. Words are learned through exposure, and repetition through routine means more exposure. Predictability increases confidence, and increased confidence helps with communication. And you see a couple examples here: getting dressed and bath time. And these are the familiar vocabulary that we might use every time we engage in that activity every day. And that repetition will be key in your children picking up on that language. Also, we want to use gestures, actions, and demonstrations when we speak to our children. We want to give them all of that visual input. We want to be animated. It gets your child's attention. We want to provide visual info to supplement what they hear. It increases the understandability of your message. It makes language more concrete, and it models a nonverbal way to communicate. It shows them that you don't have to be able to say it. You can show it. So you can hold up your car keys when it's time to go. You can wring your hands when you say, you ready to wash your hands? That visual input is really important. Tip 8, offer your child a choice. Choices are communication opportunities. Every time you offer a choice, you give your child a chance to communicate with you meaningfully. So just hold out a couple options. Ask your child to choose. Do you want the apple? I see the picture as a donut. Do you want the apple or the donut? We know which one would be chosen. Apple, you want the apple? And then wait. Banana, do you want the banana? Or donut, do you want the donut? And then wait. We want to keep putting that wait time in there. And then if they attempt to make a choice, we want to give them the word for their choice. And we want to provide some good modeling and immediately reinforce. If they say they want that donut, you give them that donut right away to show them that their message was effective and that communication is powerful and reinforcing. And tip number 9, be face-to-face. Get on your child's physical level. They can see and hear you better. And that physical closeness often improves emotional closeness, and emotional closeness improves communication. So if your child is on the floor, get down on their level. If your child's in the high chair, sit in the chair and face them. And tip number 10, ask fewer questions. Kids learn language from listening and not from answering. So instead of asking, what are you making? As your child squeezes the Play-Doh, say, oh, cool, you're squeezing the Play-Doh. Give them the language rather than asking them for the language. If you know they have the language, there's no harm in asking, but don't ask if they still need supports to tell you. So communication belongs to everyone, right? And by any means necessary. We need to pull out all the stops. And we do that by allowing them multimodal communication and modeling multimodal communication, right? And this is it's just using everything. It's focusing on the message above the means, right? And it should be respected and encouraged. We want our children to be able to use verbal and nonverbal. It helps them with receptive and expressive language. And it increases the comprehensibility of a message when you provide visual, when you're modeling, when you're using gestures. Sometimes you might have to draw it out. There's so many ways to communicate, and we want to make sure that our kids have all of those means available to them, and don't discount any of it. All right, and just talking about AAC, just introducing it as terminology. AAC, we know, stands for augmentative and alternative communication. And augmentative just means that it's added. We might add visuals to supplement our child's spoken language. Or it could be alternative, where our child might be lacking spoken language altogether. So we might replace that with visuals using low or high-tech communication devices. So we have to remember, when we are using visual communication, that a part of that is selecting icons. And icon selection is really important. And there's a hierarchy. So the younger your child is, the more concrete you would want your icons to be. And as they progress in using these visual icons for communication, then you can move to more abstract. So you might start with real objects, then photographs, then complex drawings, stick figures, and eventually universal symbols. And just remember that selection is important. We want to remember that there are 4 categories that all of our communicative functions will fit into, and we want to try to represent all 4. So we want to make sure that our child has a way to express their wants and needs, to share information, to be close with you and peers, and social etiquette, so that if they want to thank their grandmother for giving them something, they have the means. Society expects politeness language, so we should include some of that as well. And we need to just remember to ask some questions when we're selecting icons, right? So who is our kid? What really matters to them? What's really relevant to them? What words do they need to use most throughout the day? What will allow them to participate most in school? Their educational team will be integral in making those decisions, and what will allow for them to interact with their peers. And important messages that can already be communicated one way. If they already can do something to indicate to you that they want a drink, then maybe you don't need to put drink on their communication board or in their visual communication system. So just keep in mind that that it will take everyone who knows the child and works with the child on a daily basis to select those appropriate icons. And now Lisa is going to tell us a little bit more about AAC.
Yeah. Hey, Maya, will you just keep running the slide deck? My computer is, I think, is lagging. That way, if I lose, you can jump in. If I lose
Sure.
connection. Sorry.
Absolutely. Just let me know if you need, if I'm not
Yeah.
advancing fast enough.
Okay, that's fine. So let's talk about some augmentative and alternative communication strategies. And we're going to really talk about those tips that Maya presented, but how we can to modify those for our diverse learners. And so, like she said, augmentative and alternative communication, AAC, is the use of tools or alternate ways to support communication for those who cannot speak, who cannot use natural speech. So it includes communication devices or systems, tools that replace or support spoken language. And it's all the ways that people communicate outside of that verbal speech. And so it's important to note that research supports the use of augmentative communication. It has been shown to support and increase speech production by speeding up the language learning process and speeding up speech acquisition. Sometimes we hear families and even educators sometimes say, well, that's going to interfere with them developing spoken language. And the research does not support that. Research really supports that it is a bridge to verbal communication sometimes. We do know that some learners will use AAC as a bridge, but then some are going to use AAC type strategies for lifelong. And so when we're looking at augmentative and alternative communication, we can have no tech, low tech or mid tech, or high tech. And so no tech is going to be body language and gestures. Hold on just a minute. Oh, sorry. Hang on. My mouse is not working.
You need me to advance? No.
No, you're good. I was
Okay.
just trying to, yeah. Okay, sorry. Facial expressions, those utterances or approximations that sometimes our children use, and we want to acknowledge those as well. We can also have low tech, which is picture symbols, the actual objects or packaging, and simple switches. And then we have high tech through tablets, iPads, lamp devices, dedicated AC devices. And so we're going to first talk about no tech. No tech is going to be your gestures. So doing more or all done, I'm finished. I want milk, pointing, our body language, shaking our head, pointing, our thumbs up, thumbs down. And again, those utterances are vocalizations. My mouse is sticking. Advantages of no tech is going to be it's no cost because you're using your body and you're creating, and you can create in the moment. Disadvantages, of course, it's very limited and it may not transfer to other communication partners as to what's being communicated. When we're talking about using alternative communication, we always want to be sure that we're modeling it for our child as we're going through. So when we look at low tech strategies, sometimes with low tech, we think of like the picture symbols and think we need these fancy programs to create that. And certainly those are available, but you can use the packages from their favorite items or their food. You can use pictures printed from Google. When the internet came about, it opened up a plethora of images that you can pull from. You can use a miniature version of the item, and that's going back to that icon selection that Maya talked about, like where your child is at in the learning process and in the understanding of the supports. Simple battery powered switches, it kind of falls in that low tech to mid tech, depending on what literature you look at. But I kind of put it in low tech because it's battery powered, and that's just where I put it. And so you also can do photographs or drawings. And we can use those to create choice boards and communication boards. The advantages of low tech is that they're cost effective usually, they're easily portable. The disadvantages would be that you're limited to kind of what's right there in front of you. It's more difficult to combine symbols or pictures to do more complex communication. And then with no voice output, you have to really be right there with the communication partner. So it kind of limits the amount that you can move or the distance that you can be away from your communication partner. So this is just a picture of some communication boards. They enhance expression. They facilitate partner understanding. And again, when you're looking at communication boards, the pictures or the items that you're using will be that hierarchy of the icons that Maya talked about. Here's an example of choice boards. They enhance expressive communication by increasing the child's ability to communicate their preferences. I feel like it also helps develop that concept of self-advocacy because it's given the child a voice. I get to have a say. You can, with choice boards, you can limit it from 2 choices to 4 or 5 choices, depending on your child. So high tech, we're not going to really spend a whole lot of time on high tech because we really want to kind of give more simple, quick ways to integrate some AAC strategies. And high tech does require usually your speech language pathologist and your therapy team to have input into it. These are electronic computer generated speech output devices. They have dynamic displays where there's multiple pages, folders. You can have limitless vocabulary with these. You can have features like word prediction. You have auditory and visual feedback. You can communicate without having to be close to the communicating partner. The disadvantage, of course, is it can be the cost of it. Some of them can be in the thousands of dollars, but it just seems like every day I'm seeing more and more apps out there for iPads and tablets and cell phones that have these apps that provide communication devices. And so costs might not be as prohibitive in the future as technology advances. You do have the possibility of breakdown. And so you kind of want to have a backup plan and your child to be familiar with a lower tech communication system if you do have breakdown of your high tech device. Durability sometimes is not is a factor, as well as portability can also be a concern. So what does it look like when we put all this stuff together, when we talk about all those tips that Maya presented and then the AAC component, so that we're promoting language and communication for diverse learners in the natural setting? So how do I do it? You're going to look at your symbols and you go the next one, Maya. Okay, sorry. Symbols, and you can get images from the internet. You have photos from your phone. I've actually started children off with using the actual product package. So they really liked animal crackers. And so we just cut out that box of the actual product package. You can also use mini versions of the items or duplicate items. And then you need to look at the presentation. And so a lot of times we think we got to have all this fancy stuff, but you can use contact paper or even clear packing tape to laminate your picture symbols. Use sticky magnetic tape to the back of that picture and use a cookie sheet or your appliances as where you're going to put your symbols to facilitate that communication. Bookbinder rings, you can see in the picture there, a bookbinder ring where you might have a couple of different communication boards that like that one has like activities, it has food, it has body parts. And so you can use a bookbinder ring to take those with you and make them more portable. And then we have to have opportunity. And so we want to show you some ways to maximize your time to facilitate communication, and then to create moments to enhance those communication opportunities. And like Maya said, the only thing we need for communication is the opportunity and the skills. And so I want to talk a little bit about opportunities throughout your routines. So like during play, you can have a choice board to select the toy or activity that we want to play with. You can model gestures to indicate the car's going fast or it's going slow. The plane is flying up in the sky or it's landing down on the ground. So you can use your gestures to help with that, teach those concepts. Some things that you can do to kind of create that moment is place their favorite toy just out of reach, and wait with that symbol for them to indicate that they want that toy, and then model using requesting that toy with the picture symbol. You can pause a fun and familiar activity, model a gesture for more to continue. It's a great idea with bubbles or swinging, because those tend to be very motivating, and I want more of it. And they bubbles go away, so you have to keep redoing them. Opportunities during meal times. Again, you can use the choice board of what to eat or drink. Use your gestures for I'm more, I'm done, I want to get down. I want out of this high chair, I want out, I want down. Something you could do is give them a small portion of their requested item and then wait for them to request more. Now, certainly I'm not saying that they have to request every bite of their meal, but they can take a few bites, maybe move their cup to the side, and then they say, oh, I need my milk or I need my drink. And so if you had your choice board of the different things, they can indicate that they want more with a gesture, and more, what do you want more of? And if you have the picture symbols or that icon out there, then they can indicate what they want more of. You can give them choices of the serving dish. Do you want the fish plate or the Elmo bowl? Do you want, what kind of utensil do you need? Do you need the fork or the spoon? You can also give them the wrong item and see if they can then kind of be like, what? I don't know what you're doing today, Mom. You only want to give the incorrect item, though, if you know 100% sure that they can distinguish between what the right and the wrong thing. And then when you make that they catch you in that mistake, you make a big grand gesture about, oh, you caught Mom or Dad giving you the wrong thing, and so you're reinforcing that communication intent, and that they picked the right choice off of the board or off of the communication board. So during reading, again, you can do a choice. During reading, you can do the choice board on what book they want to read. You can do pictures or photos from their favorite book so that you can ask them questions afterward, or they can label items. A really great strategy is to get that communication is to pause before you turn the page. Model that gesture for more, or turn the page, so that they are then anticipating what's next, and they're building that I want more, let's do it, and you're building that communication with your child. You can also arrange the environment so there is a need to communicate. So if you have an incorrect or a missing item, or you forget a step in the task, again, you don't want to do that if you're not sure that they understand what items are needed or what the steps are. One of my favorite things is when I'm reading with my grandson is to hold the book upside down and see, like, it's wrong, like, no, it's wrong. And so you're creating an opportunity to teach them that interaction and that communication. And if you have, picture symbols there, or icons that they can communicate with you, then they can say, oh, that's wrong, no way, not, yes, that's right, or no, that's not right. You can also create opportunities during your natural routines. So those kind of routines could be bath time, taking a walk, running errands. And again, you can use your choice board to select the toy or the activity during the bath time, or where we're going to go. If we're going to take a walk, where we're walking in the neighborhood. You can use your gestures. Ooh, what did I hear? Ooh, what am I seeing? I'm using my eyes. Using those ring binders like I had in that previous picture, where you might have different things that you might see on a walk, a dog, a cat, those kinds of things, trees. You could even do colors. Oh, I see the tree. What color is the tree? It's green. And so on your walk, you're picking out and pointing things in the environment, using your gestures, using your little picture symbols throughout that to build that communication with your child as your partner. Again, you can arrange the environment to create the need to communicate. So just kind of in wrapping up, to really promote communication, we really want to look and act expectant. Like, I'm really into this. I want to interact with you. Accepting the current mode of communication, you definitely want to, this is where we're at and how can we build on it. So you don't want to say, no, I'm not giving it to you till you do this exact thing that I want. I'm accepting that, and I'm modeling the next step in the communication hierarchy. Wait expectantly. So I've presented something and I'm waiting, I'm really engaged. Make it fun. Be animated and big. Unfortunately, some of the things that our kids learn that we would prefer that they not learn is because it's an animated overture. It's big, and that catches their attention. So we want to make it animated and big, and definitely want to share in the enjoyment with our child. I think that's a given. So we really want to stress that nothing is static. Communication is constantly and continuously evolving. And so your AAC decisions are going to be an ongoing process. You do want to include your speech language pathologist, your autism specialist at school, all your school team, your OT, your APE person, your PT, because you can really be very intentional about creating communication opportunities in all of those environments, in addition to your classroom. And so I hope that this has given y'all some takeaways. Maya, is there anything you want to throw in here?
I do want to add, I found a really cool little piece of technology, an app called Speech to Symbol. And it is super cool to be able to, you can speak a word into your phone and it automatically generates an icon for that word. You can speak an entire sentence into your phone and it generates an icon for each word in your sentence. You can then, if you have a wireless printer, you can print from your phone, or you can email it to yourself and print from there. It's just super cool. It is free to, of course, it's got in-app purchases, right? It's free to load onto your phone. And then I think like $9.99 for lifetime use. And I think it would just be really well worth that amount of money if you have a complex communicator who is using AAC that requires printable symbols. Super, super cool.
Yeah, that's great, Maya. And I think that'd be great. Like if you're out and about, like if you're on that nature walk, you're walking through your neighborhood or whatever, you could really quickly come up with the things that you're seeing in the moment. That's great. Real time.
Yes. I thought it was amazing.
What's the app again, Matt?
It's called Speech to Symbol. So Speech to Symbol. I can type it in the chat. You'll recognize it in the App Store by a little orange head, like a little talking symbol. It's a little orange head with the mouth open. So I'm going to put it in here. Do we have any questions?
If y'all don't mind scanning that QR code for the training feedback. And then I think Ms. Blackman, were you going to put the bit.ly link if somebody was on their phone that they could click? Is that in the chat box? Okay. All right. So the link is in the chat box if you or if you're on your phone and can't scan the QR code.
Miss Sharon, I accidentally sent that link just to you.
I got it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. You're a lot quicker than I am.
That's okay.
So no questions?
It's really funny to hear you put into words some of the things that I've been doing all my life.
Yeah. And I think most of us are doing those things, right? We just are not sure why we're doing them and what are the fantastic benefits to doing all those things. I think that we sometimes discount the huge steps that we're making in helping our children learn to communicate. But every little thing that we do has huge results. And we celebrate the small wins, right? Mm-hmm. That's important too.
Well, I have a 25-year-old who is a non-speaker, and he has autism, and I've always said this of him, he is the most expressive non-speaker that I've ever met in my life. Mm-hmm. Because he can get you to do whatever he wants, whatever he needs. He takes you by the hand, and if you're a newbie and he knows you don't really know how to communicate with him, he will take you by the hand and take you to exactly what he wants. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So he distinguishes that. We've tried different communication systems with him for him to be more expressive that way, but they've never really been successful. And I think it's because he gets a lot of mileage out of not using those. He's a
Yeah.
little lazy. I'm going to be honest. He's a little lazy.
Well, and communication is supposed to be kind of path of least resistance, right? Communication is supposed to come really naturally and easily. So it goes against our instinct to pick up devices to say the things that we feel like we're already doing a decent job of communicating. So kudos to him for, figuring out what works for him. Really, I think what all complex communicators need is acceptance, right? And not just like tolerance for their way of communicating, but an appreciation for their ability to pull in whatever they need to be able to express themselves in an effective way. So good for him. That's awesome.
Something else that he learned in middle school, and I found this to be very important over time. His teacher in middle school taught him how to greet people. And, and she did that. She just worked every day on if he saw a friend in the hall, while they were walking somewhere across campus, to either do a high five or a fist bump, or a handshake, but usually it was a high five or a fist bump or a wave. And he still does that to this day because they worked so hard on that, and we reinforce it. But he's also learned that he can kiss the lady's hand, and he turns them into an absolute puddle on the floor.
I bet. I mean, I'm a puddle and I haven't even met him.
And he is such a little charmer. I mean, I say little because he's really small for his age, but he's just a little charmer, and he can charm the socks off a room full of little old ladies and not say a word.
I love it. That's great.
We've always struggled with trying to get him to, communicate more effectively with other people, but he really doesn't need to. So.
Well, and I think you made an excellent point about that teacher, how important it was that she taught him those, just gave him some explicit instruction on how to greet someone. Because if you don't know how to greet someone, then how do you ever get to how do we initiate a conversation? How do we maintain a conversation? All of that stuff. And you just think, well, greeting someone, you don't have to teach that, but a lot of times you do. And simply by teaching someone how to initiate that greeting, the rest of the communication will fall into place. So good for that teacher for realizing that. I think a lot of time we don't realize that things need to be taught that, others assume will come naturally.
Right.
Yeah.
I like what you brought up too about all behavior being communication, because we've also had that experience, and he has a lot of medical issues and he can't tell us that he hurts. Mm-hmm. And so when he starts getting really agitated, we know that he's got something physically going on. And so we have started, and we started this, several years ago now, but just asking, are you hurting? Touch where you hurt, I'll point his finger, and have him, and, we're working on that still. And, I mean, he's not a baby anymore. He's an adult, but we still work on those things, to try to get him to be able to tell us when, something is wrong, because that hurts a mama's heart when your kid, no matter what their age is, that your kid is suffering somehow and you can't pinpoint what's going on. It's like an infant all the time,
Yeah.
So
and then to be able
that information.
Yeah. And it's good for him to be reminded that it is important for him to communicate those things. Because a lot of times autistic individuals have the ability to communicate their physical pain, but not necessarily an understanding that communicating it will help them to feel better, right? Like making that connection, I think, is also important. So
we make the mistake too, a lot of times, of thinking that because a person doesn't have a very good way to express their language, their receptive language may be stellar, and that's always been the case again with us. I think, he's not going to follow 3 or 4 step commands, but, if you're using language that he's very familiar with, that we use all the time, very basic language, he gets it. He gets it. And we underestimate a lot of times that our non-speakers are also non-understanders. And that's simply not true.
Yeah, there is no direct correlation between communicative ability and cognitive ability. There's just not. I mean, sometimes there is, sometimes they're not. It's entirely individual. You cannot make an assumption that because a person is not a super effective communicator, that they're not incredibly intelligent. You can't ever make that connection. You can't assume. No. So thank you for this opportunity. This has been fun.
Well, it doesn't sound like I was trying to chat and give folks opportunity to ask questions in the chat box, but I don't see any more. I think that it was really very helpful.
Good. Well, I wanted to add that we're here if anyone comes up with any questions they want to ask. Our website, lasard.org, now has a new feature called Ask Lasard. If they have a question that they want to just throw into that domain on our website, someone will get back to them with the best answer we can come up with. So feel free to reach out if you think of something later.
That's great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I will be sending links to all the resources that you guys gave us. Some of them are in the chat, but I will be sending the links to the Google folder and everything that you put all your resources in so that everybody will have access to that.
Excellent. Sounds great. Thank you, Sharon.
Thanks, everyone.